Welcome, Paul. And yeah, we're gonna get started in a couple minutes here as people jump in. But yeah, there we go. Thanks for messaging in the chat as well. Always good to see you. And yeah, excited for today's session. Here we go. Um, cool, perfect. So yeah, as everyone's jumping in, I'll just give a brief introduction. This is a webinar brought to you with Prepare for VC, Startup Grind Boston, Boston New Technology. Our communities coming together and basically what how we define them as like the overall sum of the networks and communities we organize is the startup oasis. So the idea behind that is whatever stage you are in your startup journey, there's a safe space and resources where we can help connect you with everything from workshops and webinars like what you're participating in today, local events in the Boston ecosystem, and also virtual and in-person resources, as well as our Prepare for VC accelerator we call the Breakthrough Program, our free tools like Chart My Course, and other offerings where we can also connect you with the right mentors and resources to help you grow and scale your business. And one of those mentors I was fortunate to connect with, Robin. It's probably been a couple of years back now
Yeah.
through some of our mutual networking groups. And yeah, I mean, personally, like I actually didn't know a lot about the analyst space to begin with, and I've learned a lot from Robin already, and I'm excited for her to share her knowledge expertise with all of you today. And so yeah, I mean, I had been excited with I knew like analysts were something that could um, help corporates a lot and help at the late stages of the game. But Robin was able to show me that this is actually something that can help really early on in a startup journey, understanding the market you're in, the competitive analysis and research, and getting to kind of uncover these best kept secrets. So, um, yeah, excited to put on this webinar and workshop together, and excited to have everybody here that's joining us um, on this Bevy Startup Grind platform. So the way this is going to work is I'm going to hand it over in about a minute or so to Robin to kick us off. I also see Paul already said a hello in the chat. We'll love to use the chat at the bottom to keep everybody engaged throughout. Feel free to put any questions you have along the way, and we'll get to them during the Q&A portions. But want to make sure, as you think of something, get it in there so you don't forget it. And then also use that to interact with each other. So, share a little bit about what you're working on. I know some of you have communities, some of you have startups, some of you help startup companies as well. Um, and yeah, we're all coming from different backgrounds. So feel free to share your LinkedIn's, share a little bit about what you're working on, connect in the chat, and then we'll also use that for Q&A as well. And once again, I would love to welcome everybody to this discussion today, and really excited to hand it over to Robin to kick things off.
All right. Thank you so much, Jason. And it's a pleasure to be here. I'm really glad that Jason invited me to share what I'm extremely passionate about is analyst relations for startups. So I've done, my name's Robin Schaffer. I have done analyst relations for these many years, working in large corporations, global corporations, doing programs. And then when I decided to go on my own, I saw an opportunity in the startup world to bring the value of analyst relations and educate startups about what they can get and how much they can get out of analysts. So this session is designed to bring you from 0 to 100 miles an hour in 1 hour. And I'm going to start with some basics about analysts, what they are and who they're for, and then talk more about exactly how you can use them and the value you can get out of them. So as Jason said, please ask your questions in the chat, and he will interrupt if it's appropriate, or we'll do it at the end. We'll kind of play it by ear. I'm trying to be very flexible and meet the audience's needs. Burning questions, put them on the chat, and we'll try to address them where it fits. Okay? So the first thing I want to do is say, really, what is analyst relations? Let's assume you know nothing, or let's assume I'm talking to my mother and I need to explain it to her. And my best analogy is it's Consumer Reports for Business. So those of you in the US know Consumer Reports as the magazine that consumers use to buy a toaster or a car, because there are analysts that look at all of the toasters or all the cars and evaluate them and do reports and help consumers make buying decisions. The same thing happens in business-to-business technology. Analysts are experts in technologies in the business world that enterprises buy, and they write reports and they write trends, and I will go into all the things that they do to help enterprises make buying decisions. Why you would do it is these are powerful influencers, and you would leverage them to drive your business goals, and we'll talk about what those goals would be. And who is it for? Analyst Relations is not for every startup. It's for B2B tech vendors. So if you have a technology, particularly if you have one that you sell to enterprises, larger enterprises, or you aspire to sell to larger enterprises, and especially if you're in a crowded, confusing market, because analysts thrive on crowded, confusing markets, then you really need to understand analyst relations and have a plan. And then when, of course, just to say, you should plan in the beginning. As soon as you start the business, if you are looking to sell technology to businesses, you should understand technology and plan it right at the beginning, and then implement it as it makes sense, right? So you may not take action on it, and we'll talk about what taking action means, but you should not wait, because there are huge values to be gotten. So here's what we're going to do today. Three basic sections. I'm going to first explain what industry analysts are, because even those of us who've been around it for a long time have different definitions. So I'm going to give you my definition of what an industry analyst does and why they're important. And then I'm going to talk about analyst relations, which is the relationship between you, the startup, the vendor, and the analyst, and how you manage that. And then I'm going to talk about some research. There's a research report that I'm involved, research study that I'm involved with the University of Edinburgh on the state of startups with industry analysts. So it's the only study of its kind that looks at how industry analysts work with the startup community. So I'm going to just give you a few highlights of that. So let's dive in and start to understand industry analysts, what they are. These are these mysterious players. They influence B2B buyers, as I told you, and I will tell you more about that, how they influence them. They speed B2B startup journeys and reduce risks. So you, as the startup founder and owner, can use analysts to help you speed your journey and reduce the risks of a startup. They offer critical knowledge unavailable elsewhere. They have a very interesting perch where they talk to customers, they talk to other vendors, they study the market, they study technologies, they study business, and they have a lot of insights and knowledge that you can tap into. They work closely with investors. So investors depend on analysts to help them understand these complex, confusing markets. So they do impact what an investor decision. And they already help all the mid-sized and large tech vendors, the sellers. As I said, I worked in some mid-sized and large companies for years doing analyst relations in-house. And pretty much, I think, every mid-sized and up technology, business-to-business tech vendor will have analyst relations as a discipline they do. They will have a person, they will have a team, they'll have a program, they'll have a strategy. So it's out there and it's used by everyone. And if not used by you, you're missing out on some real value that the bigger guys are doing, and you can do too. So do you know them? So I'm going to help you get to know them a little bit. So what is an analyst? They have basically, I look at it as they have 4 functions. They don't all do all 4, But there's four things that happen that analysts do. They are, first and foremost, all analysts are researchers. They are buyer advisors, they are vendor advisors, and they are investor advisors. So let me tell you what those four roles mean. So let's take research. They analyze a technology domain and or a vertical, like maybe they're an expert in technology in healthcare, so they know all the technologies happening in healthcare, or they're an expert in a region. They know Europe, or they know APAC, or they know what's happening in a particular geography, and they're an expert on all the technologies happening in that geography. Or, as I said in the beginning, they just are an expert on cybersecurity or a particular technology domain. So there are different types, but they have a coverage area of focus, and they become experts and do research on that. They write evaluation reports. Those are like, you may have heard of the Gartner Magic Quadrant, the Forrester Wave. These are reports that look at a particular space and evaluate all the opportunities in that space, all the vendors that sell into that space. They also do trend research, best practices in CRM or AI or something, or what's happening, or the best top things that CISOs have to worry about. They'll do research about the general trends in the industry. And some of them produce market share, sizing, forecast, the numbers guys. They don't all do that, but some of them do that. So those are all the kinds of research that they do, which is the root of their value. And you should leverage the research to make yourself smart. Some of it is behind paywall, some of it is available publicly, but you should know that there's this font of research and insight that is available through the analyst research. The next thing is that they are buyer advisors. So buyers and enterprises will go to analysts to get advice on their general technology strategy. They'll get advice on vendors, who they should choose for a particular technology that they want to implement. And they actually also protect buyers from overly confident marketing. So buyers that are hit in the market with claims from vendors about being able to do everything, they have a BS meter, basically, and they can help a buyer sort out what's really true and protect them from believing everything that's been said. So they are really helping buyers. And the way this looks is, let me show you. So what you want to do is secure recommendations to buyers. And analysts can talk to a buyer. They might talk about a technology, and they have the opportunity to mention you, especially as a startup, to a buyer, and that's very powerful. So you want to try to secure their recommendations. But let me show you what the buyer ecosystem looks like. This is just oversimplified, but on the one side, you have vendors. You have everybody from Amazon, web services, and Google, all the way down to your startup. And you have, at a vendor, you have C-level and the SMEs, the subject matter experts, as one community. And then you have sales, marketing, comms, and PR. And what's happening is that the vendor is communicating to the buyer. On the buyer side, they also have C-levels and SMEs, and then they have everyone else. So what happens is the sales, marketing, comms, PR, the communication arm of a company, is communicating to everyone in the company. They're just talking about what they have. They're doing it through the media. They're doing it through salespeople. They're doing it through different marketing arms and PR, and they're getting messages out. But there's a secret door where industry analysts come into play. So industry analysts are talking to C-levels and SMEs at both the vendors and the buyers. The buyers are coming with questions. They need to solve their problems. The vendors are coming to educate the analysts about what they offer, so the analysts understand them. They're out there to differentiate themselves. They're out there, maybe asking questions and getting advice. But the vendors and the buyers are both talking to industry analysts. So industry analysts are a great connection point and can offer talk about you to these buyers and really impact that buying ecosystem. The third thing vendors do, because they are researchers and they're buyer advisors, is they can advise vendors. So this is a different part of their business where they can talk to you as a vendor and help you accelerate product market fit, revenue growth. They can amplify your brand. They can amplify the concepts behind your brand, the concepts you're trying to get out in the market, the categories that you're trying to establish. They can amplify those. And they can be really powerful, helping you tune your messaging, your go-to-market, your segmentation, your strategy, your partnerships. They can really help you get your business stronger and better. And you should think about them as an extension of your brain, right? So you can think about these analysts as having this perch, as I mentioned before, where they understand a lot of what's going on in the industry, and they can in your domain, and they can help you speed your startup journey. They are also investor advisors. So investors come to analysts as they're doing due diligence to validate investment targets. They provide market and technology data. And for now, and right now, as an example, AI, everybody wants to know what's going on with AI. Everybody's like, it's the biggest thing in the investment world right now. And analysts are helping investors sort out what makes sense, because the investors are overwhelmed with all the AI startups out there. And the analysts help them sort out what's happening in the market. And the technology trends. So basically, you want to make sure that investors can vouch for you. If an analyst is talking about either just a basic category or concept, analysts to vouch for that this category or concept is important. And then specifically, if they ask about you, you want them to have heard of you. You want them to say good things about you. So it can actually help inform your investment funding. So speaking of investors, there are investors, and you probably, and being part of Prepare for VC, you are probably very familiar with the challenge of pitching an investor and seeking money. When you talk to analysts, there are some very similarities and some differences. Those are two communities. So think of those as two audiences for you, right? So what's different? The investors are listening to your pitch for money, and analysts are listening to a briefing. And I'll talk more about briefings, but that's basically you educating them about yourself and your offer. It's a little bit different than an investor pitch, but there are some similarities. Investors make money backing winners. They've got to pick and predict the winners. And analysts make money helping buyers and vendors be more successful in the market. So they have a different goal. Investors will work across all sectors, and analysts really specifically work in B2B tech and some related adjacent industry markets, but they're not in the consumer space. They're not in a lot of spaces that investors are in. Investors want to focus on your business plan and opportunity. You know, where are you going? Where's the money? You know, how am I going to make money with you? And what's your business plan? How are you going to capture the market? Analysts have some interest in that, but they really want to understand your technology, and they really want to understand the business value. They have a much bigger focus on that. Investors really aren't there to give you feedback. They can give you some basic feedback on your pitch, if your story sounds good, and some high-level feedback. But analysts can give you very extensive feedback and insights, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. And investors are involved in the financial ecosystem, and analysts are involved in purchase and adoption. Investors are interested in business potential, and analysts are interested in innovation and disruption. They want to know and understand this particular market that you're playing in. So that gives you a little bit of a feel for the difference between those two communities. Now, there's a landscape of analyst firms. There are a lot of different firms, but I look at them in three groups, right? Group one are the big gorilla, and you may have heard of Gartner, Forrester, IDC. Sometimes they're called the FIGs, Forrester, IDC, Gartner, because that is a good acronym. But these are the three big gorillas in the market. And Gartner is bigger than Forrester and IDC put together. Gartner is a big, dominant gorilla. Then there are smaller, well-known firms. So if you're in the space, if you're in technology, you might get to know Omdia, 451 Group, Constellation. There's probably several dozen firms that are similar to Gartner, Forrester, and IDC in that they have large groups of analysts. They have different markets that they focus on, but these are just smaller versions of them and usually more targeted. And then the third group are independents, and these are people that these might be firms with one or two analysts or small groups of analysts that have a region, an industry, or a technology specialization. So they may be just work in the Nordics, or they may just work in banking, or they may just work in CRM or cybersecurity or some technology specialization. So between all of them, you have the landscape. Now, analysts themselves, because what it really comes down to is an individual, because Gartner has a lot of analysts, but only a handful of them maybe one or two might be relevant to you. Where an independent, you may not, nobody's ever heard of them, but they're very influential in your market, and you need to have them on your priority list. So the groups differentiate the different kinds of analyst firms, but the relevance to you, any analyst from any group might be relevant to you. Okay, so that gives you an overview of what is an analyst and an analyst firm. So let me talk to you mostly now about analyst relations, or it's called AR, which is not accounts receivable or augmented reality. It's analyst relations. So what impact can analysts have on your business? I've referred to this a couple of times, but analysts can give you leads and revenue because, as I mentioned, if they discuss you or bring you up to a customer, to a buyer, can be very powerful when you're a startup, and they can expose your name to potential customers. They're big in brand and concept awareness. If you've got, first of all, your brand can be amplified by them, and also the concepts, the categories, the ideas that you have can be amplified in the market. And they have a pretty loud mouthpieces, and there's different ways you can tap into that, which I'll get to in a minute. But basically, they can help you amplify and get the word out about who you are. They can help very much with finding product market fit because they really understand these technologies and these markets, and they can help you find the sweet spot for the offer that you want to bring to the market. And they have insights, lots of insights, because they know the competitors. They know all the competitors in the space. They know customers. They understand what customers need and what customers are buying. They understand trends, what's happening, what's coming up, and they can give you insights that can help you with your business, speed your journey. And then they can impact, as I said, the funding and stock price because they work with the investors and they can influence the way the investor community sees a particular market domain, a particular technology domain, or a particular brand, right? They can impact those perspectives of the investors. So they have a lot of potential impact for you. Now, the ways to engage, these are the four basic ways you engage with an analyst, okay? First of all, you will have an analyst engagement plan where you plan a bunch of different activities for a bunch of different analysts that come into a yearly plan of how you engage with them. The ways you engage are these four. Briefings are the basic component of analyst relations. Everything has to start with a briefing. A briefing is usually a 30, 45 minute, maybe a 60-minute even, one-way conversation. You are educating and selling them. They may ask you clarifying questions. They may make comments, like comments, but they're basically there to listen to you, and you give it as a briefing, kind of like an investor pitch. They're going to listen to you talk about your company, your value you deliver, the solutions you have, and hopefully be very impressed. Briefings are free. Never pay for a briefing. You don't ever have to pay for a briefing. They're granted based on the merit. So if an analyst is covering the space that you're in and you have a story that's truly innovative and disruptive, they want to hear it. They want to hear it. And you're going to get time with them to tell your story. And briefings, they have to be granted. So what you try to do is do as much briefing as you can with an individual analyst. So you might do an intro briefing, get their interest, then you do a follow-up where you do a deeper dive, then you come back in a few months and do an update on the business progress, and you keep a cadence of briefing an analyst over time. Inquiries are the second main way that you engage with an analyst. So inquiries are paid engagements where you are basically asking a question or conducting a dialogue, a conversation, sharing thoughts with an analyst. And inquiries are really where you can really build advocacy, because the human nature is such that if I'm listening passively to you, it's very hard for me to build a relationship with you. But when we start to get into two-way conversations where you're asking me questions, we're having a discussion, doing the fact together, I like to use the analogy like we're sitting on the same side of the table as opposed to opposite sides of the table, right? We're working together, and they can give you feedback, recommendations, insights. It's two-way dialogue, as I said, but it costs money. You have to usually have a subscription with an analyst firm, or you can sometimes one-off buy some time with analysts to have discussions. So that we get into the detail of that with my clients of how we can get some inquiry time. So inquiries can be extremely, extremely powerful way to not only get important knowledge and feedback and recommendations and insights, but build relationships with the analysts. Advisories are essentially just longer inquiries. They're just longer chunks of time. Inquiries are usually 30-minute questions on the phone. Advisories can be in-person meetings. Sometimes they're done virtually more often now. But they're like inquiries on steroids. You can really get into a topic and really explore your business and where you're going and ask them deep questions and get into deeper conversations. Sometimes people like to think of inquiries as briefings on steroids. Advisories. So people set up advisories and then spend all the time briefing analysts, which is a total waste of time, because advisory is a time and an opportunity for you to have dialogue. The fourth way, going around the circle, is marketing. I have loosely called marketing projects. This is where you would use an analyst and hire an analyst. So this would also cost money. But you would hire an analyst to either do a webinar with you, write a paper, do a ROI calculator, do primary research. But you're basically working with the analyst to create content that creates demand, and using that name, the name that's recognized in the market, to add weight to what you're doing. So this can be extremely powerful. Not only are you working with them and getting some output from them, but what I try to do with our clients is line you up with an influential analyst. So you're then spending a lot of time with that analyst while they work on your paper or they work on your project. And that helps build the relationship even more. So AR pros know certain things. So I want to give you some of the learnings. Don't reach out randomly. Don't pitch them. Don't be generic. Don't think Inc. Don't act transactionally. Don't lead with self-interest. So what does all that mean? So don't reach out randomly and only somewhat, occasionally. Engage on a regular basis. What we do with our clients is we do an extensive research to find the analysts that are all the analysts that are going to be relevant to them. And maybe it's 100. There might be 100 analysts relevant to them. But then we do deeper research to say, who are the 5, the 7, the handful that we're going to really build a relationship with and engage on a regular basis. And that's what we want to do with those analysts. We don't want to pitch them, because pitching is for investors, because they're not, or journalists is what I was thinking of here. They're not scoop oriented. They're not looking for the latest news. They're not looking for you to, impress them and get an article written about them. They are looking for a deeper understanding of what you're doing in the market. Whoops. Don't be generic. Don't tell the same story to every analyst. What you want to do is, when you're going to brief an analyst or have an inquiry, is you want to really understand that analyst and what they focus on. They all focus on different things. Even in the same domain, they have different interests. So you want to research it, understand them, understand what they think, and tailor your messages to the specific analyst. Don't think ink, right? So PR relations is about, pitching a journalist and getting a story. Quick coverage isn't the goal. Sometimes analysts do cover you, and coverage is a goal, but it's not. We're not trying to just get ink and just get quick coverage. We're trying to build relationships that can lead to a much longer, more strategic relationship. Don't act transactionally. Be in it for the long haul. It takes time to develop relationships, to build trust and build advocacy. And don't lead with self-interest. Don't talk about me. Appeal to their wants and needs. Give to them. Understand what they're trying to do and help them. So I have a little analyst relations pop quiz. So I'm not going to make it too interactive. I'm just going to ask you some questions and have you think for a minute. So does anybody know how many analysts there are in the world? So we talked about all of the firms, the big 3, and the group 2 and the group 3, the smaller firms, and then the independents. There are about 10,000 analysts in the world. How many analyst firms? I talked about Forrester, IDC. I threw out a couple of other names, and I talked about generally independents. There are about 1,000 analyst firms. So then about 25 or 3,000 analysts work for Gartner alone. That's the biggest, baddest firm out there. The second largest firm in terms of analysts is IDC, and the third largest is Forrester. And then the firm sizes with analysts go all the way from a couple hundred, a couple dozen, to 1 to 2 people in a particular firm. So that's how you get 10,000 analysts in 1,000 firms. This is a really interesting question. How many buyer conversations does one analyst have a year? So I talked about analysts being buyer advisors. Not all analysts are. Some analysts only support vendors, and some analysts understand and support buyers. So if it's a buyer-focused analyst, how many buyer conversations does one analyst have a year? It's going to vary widely, but Gartner, who does the most of these conversations, will have 800, a Gartner analyst will have 800 or more conversations a year with your buyers. So I was with a firm once, and the analyst that covered our space, I asked him once, how many conversations do you have a week where you have the opportunity to talk about us? Not that you do, but you have the opportunity. I asked him the opportunity where it would fit the conversation for you to talk about us. And he said 20 conversations a week. So this was one analyst in one little space for Gartner. And there's many analysts at Gartner that cover our space. So this just gives you an idea of the breadth and the opportunity that analysts have to impact buyer decisions. What are analysts always interested in? And the answer to that is innovation and disruption. They want to understand. If you think about an analyst that is an expert in a particular domain, particular technology domain, their their value is in how well they understand that domain, how well they understand the vendors, the trends, the technologies, the technology innovations, and they know that the innovation and disruption happens at the start. Usually, that's where it happens. So they are always interested in what's happening with you as a startup. Analysts are paid for what? A lot of people think they're paid for play. You pay the analysts enough and you get some coverage and you get them to say nice things about you. And that's the farthest thing from the truth. There probably are analysts out there that are paid for play. There are some bottom feeders, as I like to call them, but a reputable analyst, and the vast majority are reputable, are paid for expertise and time. If you want their expertise, you want their advice, you want their time to work on a paper or come do a webinar, you're going to pay them for that. That does not mean that you color their opinion. That does not mean you've bought their advocacy. You've just bought their expertise to help you or their time to help you on a project. So they're paid for expertise and time. Now, if you use that time well, you can end up getting advocates out of it. So it's a very interesting dynamic. I kind of alluded to this before. What percentage of mid-size and large vendors work with analysts in terms of the B2B technology space? They all do. Pretty much they all do. I don't know of a company that's more than $100 or $200 million that's in the B2B tech space that does not work with analysts. And what does it cost to start an analyst relations program? So this is a good question because I constantly get startups that think they have to go buy, that's very expensive, that they have to go buy expensive subscriptions and have a person and do a big focus to build an analyst relations program. And that's very far from the truth. It really doesn't take a lot of time or money to start an analyst relations program. I'm going to talk about what it takes in a minute, but you can start it. Briefings are free. You can start getting on their radar and start getting value without spending much money at all. So that's a misconception that I want to straighten out right here. It does not a lot. Okay. All right. So that's the end of the about analyst relations. And I want to just tell you a little bit about this research that I mentioned. I work with a colleague of mine, and I work with the University of Edinburgh in Scotland. And we started a research program on the state of startups with industry analysts. We like to call it SSIA, SIA. And we started it in 2022, and we did one research round, and we're doing another research round now. And if anybody wants to participate, it's open for a few more weeks for people to take our survey. But basically, let's see if I do have a description of it, so I don't have to explain that. It's conducted with the University of Edinburgh. In 2022, we studied 500 people, vendors, analysts, and investors and accelerators. So we had 3 different survey instruments. We talked to the startups, vendors, we talked to the analysts, and we talked to their community of investors and accelerators and asked them questions, different questions for each community about the state of startups and industry analysts. The highlights of the survey, of the research, were analysts are very interested in startups. We heard that loud and clear from the analysts. They want to hear from startups. They're more interested in startups than startups think. And they want to hear much earlier than startups think that analysts are interested in them. So we heard that really loud. An interesting point we found is that the more startups work with analysts, the more they hold them in high esteem, the more they find them knowledgeable, independent, and trustworthy. So what I'm saying is, if a startup has not had experience with an analyst, they would tend to rate them lower, much lower, in terms of being knowledgeable, independent, and trustworthy. And the more experience they have with them, the higher their esteem went. So it was an absolute parallel. So the outcome of that is that you need to work with them to appreciate what they can bring to you. That's hard to see from afar. And we found that when we asked startups about that work with analysts about what gives them the highest value is the analyst insight, feedback, and recommendations is the highest value to startups. So you'll get this deck, and I have a link to more information on the SIA survey. You can get the 2022 report. It's a 28-page report that's really nice and compact and has a lot of findings. You can still participate in the 2025 research. And we also have a handful of podcasts that we do, video podcasts based on the SSIA with a bunch of different vendors and analysts and investors talking about this whole dynamic. So that's a good thing you can listen to. So a couple of the highlights I mentioned a little bit, but the majority of startups see critical value in industry analysts. 55% of responding startups rate working with analysts as very important or essential. But that's a good number. But 72% of industry analysts rate working with startups as very important or essential. So there's a gap there. Startups don't perceive the analysts as highly as the analysts perceive the startups. So the lesson to take away from that is that analysts are very interested in you, and you can get a lot of value from them. This is what I talked about before, and this is just an illustration of the more mature a startup is in working with analysts, the more trustworthy and independent they see them. So this is like the medium of the answer option. So you can see as this trustworthy is pink and independent is purple. They go way up as they work with them more, the more mature their program is. And there were surprisingly harsh negative comments from respondents with no or low AR maturity. So the people that didn't work with analysts did not think of them as good allies. We asked a question about when should you start working with analysts? And this is a lot of information on this chart, but I'll net it out for you. Both analysts and startups agreed that product maturity is what they really want to see. So when you have a product maturity or an idea maturity, if you've got something that's really going to disrupt the market, the analysts want to hear about it at the napkin stage. If you've got a good idea, get out there as soon as you can. The revenue level, startups thought they needed a lot. Revenue was much more significant to startups. It's not significant at all to analysts. It's 6.8 out of 100 of the importance of revenue. But we asked them, should you work with them when your product is a certain level of maturity? Situational, like your competitors discussed in analyst publications. Expansion, like you have a new geography or a segment targeted. Revenue, you have a certain revenue level. Or time in business. As you can see, time in business is the least significant.
Yeah, Robin. We had a quick question about the definition of product maturity and what they're looking for.
Yeah, so basically it was a pretty non-defined question, but we were asking them, like, do you need a fully mature product, like out in the market in a general availability stage versus just an idea? And they both felt that the more mature the product is, the more valuable that analyst conversation was.
Perfect. Great. Thank you.
One thing that's interesting, it's not actually on the slide, was that customers, like having a Rolodex of customers, was not nearly as important to an analyst as startups thought. They wanted to have like proof that there's interest in the market, and they want to, they like to hear stories about customers, but they did not need fully baked case studies to start to talk to you and start to see value. They wanted to see it, at the beta stage. Okay, so basically, startups should engage with analysts early and strategically. The strongest motivation for analysts to work with startups and the premier value that startups can get are both insights driven. So if you think about analysts and the value, there's marketing value, brand out there, getting you leads, getting you opportunities, or there's insights, which are the incoming information that analysts can give you. And both startups that worked with analysts and the analysts themselves felt that the strongest value is on that insight side, which is interesting. Analysts can help you shorten the time to product market fit and give you earlier qualified visibility. So not just visibility, but qualifying and vouching for that visibility. The improvements you can make with engaging with analysts is less marketing speak and better briefings. And analyst investments are moderate, but increasing awareness and plans to intensify AR or warnings of a race for specialist resources. So there are more people making more investments in analysts going forward. So we're really anxious to get information on 2025. We asked a bunch of new questions about what firms people are finding valuable and what use cases are most valuable. So we're going to amend that report with a lot of good new data, and we'd love you to participate in the next few weeks if you can. It takes about 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes to fill out the survey. Okay, so what's next? Leverage the value now. If this fits you, if you see yourself and see value for you in that, leverage it now. You want to identify relevant. First thing you want to do, I said there's 10,000 analysts in the world. There's probably only a handful that you really, really want to talk to and really move your market. So you can start with Gartner, Forrester, and IDC. Start there. Look on their sites, their websites. Search for your space. Start to see, you can't get into the behind the firewall of the sites, but you can see what research is being produced, what analysts are covering, are producing that research, and start to learn from their sites who is relevant to your space. You can search publications and conferences. It's a good way to find analysts. And I always recommend using that has AR experience to help, because there are tools, there's expertise, and there's ways to make this process a lot more streamlined for you. So AR experts can make the finding of relevant analysts really much more straightforward. Start to engage. The first thing you want to do, even if you want to go buy a subscription, the first thing you want to do is brief analysts and impress them. So you want to get, again, an AR expert can help you tell the story in a way that will impress the analysts, because impressing them is the start of creating advocacy. You want to build that relationship. You want to have, I always say that a first briefing is like a first date, right? You don't with these guys. And it's not all or nothing. You can take small steps to gain benefit. It does not have to be an all-consuming thing. You can take tiny steps and get a lot of benefit from analyst relations. And it doesn't take big budgets or major time. It really doesn't. Okay, so that's my workshop. And I'm very, very interested, Jason, if there's any questions.
Perfect. Yeah, no, great presentation. And yeah, we can start with a question from Paul. He's asking how much it costs to engage with, say, Gartner or IDC per year at more of the beginning level.
Yeah, so it doesn't have to cost anything, because if you've got a good startup with a good story and you know how to engage the analysts, they will give you time. they're very interested in startups, and you can start to brief them and get time with them. And through the briefing process, you can start to get a little bit of feedback and build relationships. It'll only take you so far, but you can take a big first step without spending any money. Now, when you get to the point where you kind of run out of runway with the analyst, just briefing them, and you want to start to engage more deeply, and there are different reasons that you'd want to do that, then you need a subscription, and that's where the money comes in. So Gartner is going to cost like $80,000 a year for you to access the analysts and get their inquiry rights and get their research access. It's a lot of money. Gartner, Forrester is less than that, maybe in the $60,000 range. IDC can go as low as $30,000. Smaller firms can be lower than that. So it really depends on what you're looking, what kind of value you're looking to get out of the analyst relationship. And I'm always I'm like a guerrilla AR person, meaning that I want to get as much value as I can without spending your money. I watch your budget like I watch my pocketbook. Like, let's make sure we're going to get value before we spend money with the analyst. And you can make a big step forward without doing that. Did that answer your question, Paul? You can just
yeah, and
yes, thank you, Robin.
Okay, great.
Perfect. Yeah, I was going to say, feel free to unmic or use the hand raise or ask a question in the chat. And as the next question's coming in, also wanted to ask, is the best approach typically finding your analysts based off of their previous topics, or put out a request for particular categories? How do you sort through like which analyst you're choosing to reach out to?
We usually do, we do it based on what they've written. There's really two sources. We have their bios, what they say they cover, which isn't always accurate, but if they'll state what their coverage areas are, and we use that to define who's going to be most relevant to them. But we also look really closely at who's writing about the topics that are relevant to you. So we ask our clients, we come with a set of keywords, right? So it's sort of like an SEO project, what terms, words and terms are the relevant analysts going to be writing about, right? So if you do contract lifecycle management, that's one of my clients, that's a really, really defined space, and it's very easy to find the analysts that write about that space. We also can find people that write about procurement or legal or some adjacent areas. So we look at what they're writing about, and we search that to find analysts that are writing about relevant topics. If it's we had an industrial automation company that was a little bit harder to find the right analyst. So we had to really poke and prod and look at the content, look at their bios a lot to try to find the right people. But I think the point is that we have to do it based on what they've written about, in the past.
Perfect. No, that makes sense. And John, we'd love to have you ask a question as well.
Yeah, Rob, I just wanted to say thank you so much. It was really insightful. Gave lots of food for thought, and it just shows the value.
Right.
Just shows the value in engaging analysts. I can see this is definitely something we're going to be looking at very carefully over the next 6 to 9 months. I can immediately see, for especially like you mentioned, the crowded space, there's immense value in looking at this.
Great. I'm so glad to hear that. I'm glad it was really valuable, and I'm glad you see the opportunities for yourself. That's exciting.
Perfect. And we have a question from Ian about
I can go ahead. Hi, Robin. Nice to see you again.
Hi.
Unfortunately, I missed the first half of the presentation, but I'll look out for the video. As I mentioned, we're now working with a client which has developed a new software tool, which it's targeting the public, but more it's targeting studios and video production companies. Do you think
Right.
that they pay attention to analyst reports for something like this, for a software tool?
Maybe we get a lot of these kind of questions, and we have to go into the data and start looking for the coverage of that particular space. I'm not 100% sure. I don't know off the top of my head whether that area, you want to find the area that analysts are writing about, because they
Right.
write about the things that people are asking them about and the things that their customers want to know about. So I would say maybe. I don't have a good answer for you. I'm sorry.
Okay, no, I understand. So I will do some research and see if I can find comparable tools and see if there is analyst coverage. I mean, what I've heard about the studios is they basically, rather than read a report, they would probably just say, "Give me a copy and I'll try it," and they'll give it to one of their technical team and they'll evaluate it.
Right.
That seems to be the rule in Hollywood anyway. Uh,
Yeah.
but I will investigate what you suggested and see if there is
Sure,
coverage.
sure. And reach out to me, Ian, if I can help you think through it and do a little research for you. I'm more
Will
than
do.
happy to
Thank you.
do that.
Yeah, great. Okay, I'll look out for the video of the whole
Okay,
presentation.
great.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that's all the questions outside of this one, which I'll take, which was, will the recording of the presentation be available? And yes, it will. It'll be on the event page. So we're going to post the video on there. We'll also post it on YouTube and share it out with everybody that came out, to go back, rewatch, and we can share this contact from Robin to reach back out with any additional questions or to have her help you on your analyst relations journey.
Oh, I forgot to mention, Jason, I'm sorry. I have a free chapter. I have a book on analyst relations that I wrote, Analysts on Analyst Relations. And in the book is a chapter all about startup analyst relations for startups. I have that available as a separate piece that I'm going to send to everybody that was on the call today. So we'll send it as a follow up.
Perfect. Yeah, that'll be great. Awesome. Yeah.
And I'm, if anybody has any questions, I mean, analyst relations really, like with Ian, we have to talk a little bit more about, your situation to see how it can help you and if it can help you, and how it can help you. And I'm always happy to do that. If anybody wants to reach out to me, my number's there, my email's there. Don't hesitate.
Yeah. So I probably will do that, Robin. Thanks.
Great.
Perfect. I appreciate the great presentation and questions and engagement in the chat. Yeah, thanks again, Robin. Yeah, we'll share all the materials shortly. And thanks everyone for coming out. And yeah, we'll be back with more startup, startup grind virtual chats. We have pitch practice. I'll share. Yeah, we do with Boston New Tech every Thursday as well. If you're building a early stage tech company, we have additional showcase and other events. Startup Weekend Hackathon coming up the end of May. So yeah, be on the lookout for other email updates and looking forward to have everyone back at our events as well. Thanks again.
Great. Bye, everybody.